Adjudged to be largely peaceful, Saturday's governorship election in Ekiti State is not without its flaws, and that's according to foreign and local observers who participated actively in the poll. For Yaga Africa, the electoral umpire needs to adopt a more transparent information analysis of permanent voter cards collected, as it also asks voters to take a further step of holding politicians accountable.
Yaga Africa commends the people of Ekiti State for their resilience and commitment to non-violent elections. We encourage voters to sustain their participation in the electoral process beyond the elections by holding political parties and candidates accountable for their campaign promises. Yaga Africa encourages INEC to uphold the principles of transparency by publishing the total number of permanent voters' cards collected in Ekiti State on its website.
In his assessment, the British Deputy High Commissioner says the poll went well and more could be done to check voter inducement ahead of 2023.
I was in 16 polling units. Our teams were across the whole of Ekiti, and I think we saw a peaceful election. We certainly saw an election where the materials from INEC arrived early. INEC were organized. I think we saw the BVAs performing perhaps better than they have in the past, and I think that's very encouraging. It's really important that any culture of vote buying is addressed, and ahead of the 2023 elections, people feel that their vote is their vote, and indeed it can count for them, and there shouldn't be a need to buy a vote because the choice they make is the important choice for the future of their state and their country.
The citizens on the streets of Ekiti rate this election high in conduct and security, and they seek the best of performance from the incoming governor.
For the Ballot, as we call him, I would like to focus his attention on, giving youth employment. And one of the youth in the state, and this is the problem we are passing through here, we youth, we need employment. We see a lot of youth, roaming about, a lot of ladies, they have nothing to do. They're roaming about, no job.
We want him to be so focused on security, because I think Dr. Kayode Fayemi has laid a very good foundation. All the killings, kidnapping that we are experiencing in other states, those things are not even discovered in Ekiti State because of the foundation. So we want our Yebanji to improve on the legacy of Dr. Kayode Fayemi.
With the elections now over, the governor-elect is expected to ensure that he leads the state as a united entity to actualize its full potential.
Congress, APC, secured the majority of votes and fulfilled all conditions, effectively affirming your
Well, I did say that we're talking about a review of the Ekiti elections, and we have with us this morning Mr. Rotimi Oyekomi, who is the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman. You're welcome once again to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And I say once again, you know why I say once again?
Yeah, I know.
It's been a while indeed, but Ekiti now is the latest in the line of INEC's preparation to the big one, to the big season of 2023. And there have been questions as to how INEC performed. INEC, I think, in some areas has received commendation, and there are people who still say that there's plenty of room for improvement. From INEC's perspective, how would it rate itself as an organization?
Well, that's a question I will be biased in answering.
Indeed, I understand, but I mean, let's give room for your bias.
Right, so that's it. And we are quite pleased with what our stakeholders have been saying because they were involved all along in the planning process. We released the timetable a year ahead, and we prepared very well for the elections. We trained our ad hoc staff. Recall that we conducted the Anambra and the FCT elections, where we studied the hitches with regard to the beavers. We normally accredit observers when we want to conduct elections, and they write reports, and we consider those reports. We also receive reports from our field officers that tell us exactly what happened, what worked well, what didn't work well. So going to Ekiti, we were very much prepared. All the areas where we noticed that there were glitches, there were weaknesses, we tried to correct them, especially the area of logistic deployment. You know, this time we didn't put our sensitive materials in the central bank. They were all in our offices, and we deployed from there. But I think we should also commend the transport unions because they cooperated with us. We don't have enough vehicles to, you know, deploy all these materials.
So you're still using the NURTW? Definitely,
because we don't have enough vehicles to actually perform the deployment processes during elections. So they brought their vehicles, the required number, and they performed according to the memorandum of understanding, the terms of agreement that we signed with them. So, but for us, the most important thing is the cooperation of all stakeholders. We've always said it, that when all stakeholders cooperate with the commission, we will deliver. And this is a good example of that synergy that is needed to enable us to perform our functions. When you don't disrupt our elections, when you allow us to, you know, do what we are supposed to do, when voters come out and comply with the instructions, we'll have a good election. And I think that what happened in Ekiti is for us an indication that we need to work harder. You know, success here means more work. And we have Osun coming within the next 3 weeks, and we'll go into Osun with as much zeal as we conducted the Ekiti governorship election.
Let me ask you about voter turnout. We know that roughly 700,000 plus people were registered, accredited for. Yeah, registered for the elections, according to what INEC, you know, released for Ekiti.
Overnight, Ekiti has about 988,000 registered voters, but about 76% of that collected their PVCs.
Their PVCs. So we knew that they potentially could vote.
Right.
But from what we see in terms of the voter turnout, it's still less than half of that, which turned out, or who turned out to vote.
Right.
From INEC's expectation, and from what we have seen, the trends that we have seen before now, was that low, or was INEC expecting more people to show up at the polls?
Well, it's low when you look at the total number of registered voters and even the figure of those who collected their permanent voter cards. But I think it's an improvement on, for instance, Anambra governorship election. Of course, Anambra was different because the security situation was fundamentally different from what we have here. But I think that...
so Anambra might not be a good benchmark?
Might not, because of the circumstances.
Yes, of course. So what were you benchmarking the expected turnout against?
No, because we carried out a lot of voter education. And even our partners, our development partners also assisted our civil society to, you know, sensitize people to come out and vote. And Ekiti has a history of participation in elections. So we felt that we could have, maybe it was too much an expectation, you have as much as 50%, you know, looking at the number of those who collected their PVCs. But I think that, you know, when all the reports coming from our field officers, we can then interrogate what actually happened. But I think going forward, with the awareness that is being created right now, I think we'll now begin to see a better turnout in our elections.
Okay, let's take a break at this point, and then from here we'll take the conversation to Lagos.
All right, welcome back, Mr. Ikomi. You know, the chairman of INEC spoke about the challenge that they were facing with vote buying, and he said actually that they had reconfigured the ballot boxes in terms of how they were going to appear, such that they eradicate and defeat that purpose entirely. But on the day, and as many who observed the elections who were there did say, that did not reflect. People were voting, they folded their ballots, they showed other political parties who they voted. It was in very close proximity with some of those who were inducing them, so vote buying was rampant, meaning what the chairman had said didn't happen on the day. Why was that the case?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to disagree with the notion that vote buying was rampant. And I base my argument on the figures of polling units that we have in Ekiti, 2,445. Now, when people say vote buying was rampant, what percentage of those numbers of polling units reflected vote buying as an activity that took place on that day? Nobody has given us the statistics. Vote buying did take place. And I also want to tell you a little bit of history. Recall that in 2018, it was this same Ekiti governorship election that we conducted that this vote buying issue reared its ugly head. And there was so much noise at that time, and people called on INEC to take action. And arising from what happened in 2018, the commission met with stakeholders to find solutions to what we can do to curb the vice. And stakeholders suggested to us that, number one, we should stop voters from taking their cell phones to the polling booths. Then we should stop them from taking also any photographic equipment into the polling booth. And we reacted by applying those rules where we conducted the Osun governorship election that came immediately after the Ekiti governorship election. So we tried our best. First, we reconfigured the polling booth. It wasn't like this as it is before that 2018 election. And then we changed the position of the ballot box to put it in the open. And then we said that people can stay around the polling area with their cell phone, but at the point of going into the polling booth, you are not allowed to take your cell phone in. And you know, that created some form of reaction at that time. People were then accusing us that, okay, we want to, maybe we are trying to hide the result. We don't want people to snap the result that we normally paste at the polling unit at the end of the election. But that wasn't the case. We then quickly reacted and no, we are not asking people not to bring their cell phones to the polling unit area, but you can't, as a voter, accredited with your ballot paper, you take the cell phone into the polling booth. And arising from that as well, the commission invited the EFCC and the ICPC into the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security because they have the backing of the law to deal with such negative activities. And as you can see, in the Ekiti election, the EFCC moved against some alleged vote buyers and sellers, and we look forward to a period when they will be successfully prosecuted.
Which is
now,
why...
we will continue to try our best.
Well, Mr. Oyekome, if I could
we'll
just comment...
We'll continue to try our best.
Pardon me. So essentially, you just literally agreed that there indeed was vote buying. And I wonder what you then mean saying that it wasn't rampant. Because if you speak to the Ekiti people, they tell you that the term Dibo Kosebe, which is vote so you can get money to cook a pot of stew or whatever, was rampant. That was essentially what they were being told. Dibo Kosebe, vote so you can repay your loans, vote so that you can do all of that. So that was essentially the order of the day then. But I'd like you to take a look at this video, Mr. Oyekome, because this essentially was what played out during elections in Ekiti over the weekend. So you had people voting. Yes, they took their mobile phones, definitely. So you had people voting. So you see the man, he's done, you know, thumb printing. Then he folds the that ballot paper. You can see him. And then he literally shows, you know, the agents that this is who I am voting for. In the clear view of everyone. I'm sure you can see that, Mr. Oyekome. And I think that was how this vote buying played out. So you have someone watching to see if you indeed voted for his party. Then he takes note. Can you see that? So he shows that this is who I'm voting for. And then they go behind the scenes to share the money. This is what I witnessed personally. So would you agree that this arrangement is fundamentally flawed and, of course, allowed vote buying?
Nigeria is a dynamic society. You respond to a problem, but it doesn't mean that you have solved all the problem. But I'm interested in figures. That's why I was saying that, look, you need to provide the evidence to prove that this thing was rampant. We have 16 local governments. We have 2,445 polling units. if you tell me that vote buying took place in 50 to 60% of the total figure, then I will agree that it's rampant. But if it's in isolated cases, and you know, when the media focuses on something, I'm a journalist, I'm proudly so I know what I'm talking about.
Okay,
when the media focuses
in that
on
case, Mr. Oyegami, do you have figures yourself to tell us this wasn't rampant compared to what you had last elections?
That's what I'm saying. Our field officers will bring their reports and we look at that. And I tell you, at the right time, the commission will give a full assessment of what happened in Ekiti. And these are things that we are going to address.
Mr. Oyegami, why was the ballot box so positioned in full glare?
Why was the what?
The ballot box so positioned such that, you know, those who are standing around can't see. Why was it so positioned?
Well, that's not a bad thing to put the ballot box there. But, you know, human beings are dynamic. If we had put the ballot box at the back, people will allege that maybe, you know, some people will stuff the box with ballot papers. We've been dealing with all manner of allegations, and those allegations informed some of the decisions we took as to what happens, you know, when voting takes place on election day. If you try to hide the ballot box and people don't see it, you create another problem. But the video clip you just showed me, I don't think that was the situation in all the polling units. Yes, I agree. Vote buying is a problem. It took place in some places, but I don't think it was rampant enough to affect the legitimacy of the person that was elected. For us, it is a process that we focus on. We make sure that we provide a level playing field for people to cast their votes, and we expect the other agencies saddled with the responsibility of dealing with such things to do that. We have security agents around, we have EFCC officials around. Our officials are busy with the election proper, so we cannot be focusing on vote buying at the time that maybe 3, 4, 5 of our officials are attending to the registered voters that turn up to vote on election day.
There are ways that the ballot box doesn't have to be in close proximity. It could be a little way further, such that whoever is folding anything for any agent to see will have a hard time looking and seeing what transpired. That's on the one hand. But secondly, could you tell us, what is the position of INEC or the law concerning these placeholders who were trying to meet the deadline to submit their lists and their vice presidential or deputy governorship candidates?
Look, I'll just tell you what the Electoral Act says. The Electoral Act says that for the purposes of nominating candidates, there must be a convention, and INEC must be invited to that convention. And the process will either be through direct, indirect, or consensus. Okay? And there's another clause in the Electoral Act that any political party that fails to comply with the provisions cannot assume to have nominated anybody. So I'll stop at that. And I know why you're asking that question. And, you know, all the things that have been published in the newspaper in the last few days, INEC has not issued any statement. We have not issued any document to say this is a list of candidates for this position for the 2023 general election. And if you look at the 2023 timetable and schedule of activities, we have a timeline for that.
Okay, so to tell us straight away, can a political party replace their vice presidential candidate having submitted the list to INEC?
Well, substitution is allowed under certain circumstances.
Such as?
Okay, so what I'm wondering right now is what are the key lessons that INEC is taking from these elections going into the Australian elections? What key changes can we expect to see?
Well, we are going to follow the same template because this Ekiti template was quite good. But like I said, I wasn't on the field when the election took place. So we need to quickly look at the field reports that our electoral officers and other ad hoc staff or collation officers, you know, will submit, which I'm sure will be coming in the next few days, where of course, you will have a portion where you have challenges. First, you know, one of the most important things in an election is deployment of materials.
Yes, I find it interesting that you have praised the logistic aspects. I'm sure that INEC itself was wondering where it was going to keep its materials since it was no longer keeping it with the CBN.
Right.
But people are asking and wondering whether that's going to be feasible for the general elections, keeping materials in the offices, especially since the Air Force too might be overstretched trying to deliver materials to all of the different states that we have.
I think the Commission will take a decision on that. I don't know what the Commission is going to do, whether they're going to follow a particular template, I don't know. But what I'm saying is that deployment of materials to polling units is extremely important. You know, people will start counting the time. The moment that you don't open the polling units in good time, people will start complaining. Under our regulations, we are supposed to open polling unit at 8:30 and close poll at 2:30, provided that all those on the queue as at that time had voted. But if you still have people on the queue, you can extend the voting period till when the last person on the queue has voted. So the good things that happen, we'll take note of it. The challenges that will be harvested from the field reports that we are going to get, we'll make sure that we take care of that going into Osun. I know Osun has more local governments than Ekiti. Ekiti has 16, Osun has 30, and Osun has more polling units. So we are going to cover a wider geographical space than Ekiti. And I think that we are prepared. We've been preparing for Ekiti as much as we prepared for, we are preparing for Osun as much as we prepare for Ekiti. And I think that the template, the one we have now is good, and we'll continue to improve on it.
Okay, let me just confirm from you, because we saw this newspaper headline saying that INEC is not aware of placeholders. But is it possible that the candidates can swap the names of their vice presidential candidates? Is there a deadline for doing that?
Well, I don't know what people are talking. It's just speculation.
That's what?
Like when people ask me, I ask them, did you ask the party?
Indeed.
And the party said...
Indeed. As a matter of fact, we have one, if there's anyone I'm quite certain of, because the interview was conducted right here in our studios, is that of the candidates of the Labour Party. The Dr. Doyin Okukwe, whose name was submitted as vice presidential candidate, confirmed that indeed he is a placeholder in the meantime, until they're able to reach a substantive conclusion on who precisely will be the running mate to their candidate.
Well, you know, it's a controversial thing I don't want to talk about, but we have our rules and regulations. And when you are substituting, there are conditions. For instance, if a candidate dies, you can substitute. You know, if, for instance, you nominated somebody and before the date of the election, the person dies, you can substitute. But I don't think that there is any place in our laws for that term called placeholder. So I don't know where the term came from. Okay, so it's strange to us.
So for the people who did not participate, because there are CSOs that have asked INEC to also take cognizance of people who participated, for instance, in the presidential primaries, but are now miraculously holding senatorial tickets. What's INEC going to be doing about that?
It's a very simple thing. The Electoral Act is clear on the nomination process, on what should be followed. The political parties are aware, the Commission is aware. And the Electoral Act is clear that if political parties don't follow what is in that law, then they can't assume to have nominated anybody. But, you know, like I said, I'm not the Commission. The Commission will decide on whatever happens. I don't know what name has been submitted. I haven't seen the list of any political party. I'm not in a position to see that. But I know that when the time comes, the Commission will take a decision and an announcement will be made.
Okay, we'll leave it there. You've said you're not the Commission, and the Commission will take a decision. I think we'll have to hold on to that. Who precisely should we talk to as speaking for the Commission?
You are talking to me.
Oh, indeed.
Right.
So you will still be the one to come and...
No, what I'm saying is that,
yes,
you know, the Commission comprises the INEC chairman and the national commissioners. That's the highest level of the Commission.
Okay.
So all decisions affecting Commission is taken at that level. So when you hear the Commission announcing something, that means that the INEC chairman and the 12 national commissioners representing the 6 geopolitical zones have met, have taken a decision, have had a quorum, and the decision has been passed. That's what I mean by the commission.
Okay. So we'll have to thank you very much for coming on this morning. Mr. Rotimi Oyikomi is the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC chairman, and we're talking about a review of the Ekiti elections.